Most people don't know who David Goggins is, but the people who do know him, they rarely forget him.
So a lot of people put a title on me. They want to, they see me now. They see me now as the guy that with his shirt off who can do 4,030 pull-ups in 17 hours, who can run 205 miles. And
He had no fame, no early success, and he had no clear advantage. They don't forget him because his story doesn't feel like inspiration. It feels like proof that the limits most people accept are not real boundaries, but habits. He didn't start as anything special. He went from nearly 300 pounds and completely stuck in life to running ultra endurance events most people can't even finish once.
I had to build this callous mind, and I built it through suffering. The first instinct is don't go out there and do it. My instinct was, we gotta fucking go out there. Anything that was fucking horrible in my life that I would normally say no, that was inhumane to most people, I had to go do it.
In his own accounts, he describes growing up in an environment shaped by abuse and instability, where fear and pressure were part of everyday life.
My dad beat the shit out of me when I was growing up. I was the first black baby born in this hospital called Miller Fillmore in Buffalo, New York. My dad owned skating rinks, he owned bars, he ran prostitutes from Canada to Buffalo, New York. My dad was a big time pimp, big time, anything bad about a person, big time hustler. I'll never forget this. In my mind, I was always afraid. My whole life I was afraid, but I had this fucking voice, this conscience that would always be battling me, saying, hey, you gotta get up and do something.
That kind of environment doesn't create direction, it creates survival. And survival does not push you forward, it keeps you in place. That pattern followed him into adulthood. At one point, he was overweight, stuck, and working a job as an exterminator. He has described reaching nearly 300 pounds during that period of his life.
I said, this ain't gonna be it for me. So in that restaurant, I quit my job, left my canister in that restaurant, my spray canister, got back in my Ecolab truck, and I went home. And I started working out like somebody, I became the most obsessed person on the planet Earth. And I had to invent a guy that didn't exist.
This is where the lives of most people just stay stuck. Not stuck in collapse, but in repetition. A life that continues but doesn't evolve. A routine that feels normal enough to tolerate, but not meaningful enough to change. David Goggins realized if nothing changed, nothing would change. That truth is simple, but most people avoid it because it removes excuses. And once excuses are gone, only action remains. So David acted, not gradually, not perfectly, not when it felt easy. He started doing things that felt uncomfortable on purpose, and he kept doing them.
You know, I wasn't part of a good old boy network. I didn't want to be part. I wanted to be David fucking Goggins. For too long in my life, and it got me in trouble. For too long in my life, I wanted to be accepted.
Most people misunderstand this part completely. They think change looks like transformation, and it doesn't. It looks like repetition against resistance. Doing things you don't feel like doing them when there's no reward yet, doing them when nothing in your life confirms it's working, and continuing anyway. That is where most people quit. Not because they are incapable, but because they require proof before persistence. He removed that requirement and built discipline through refusal. He refused to stop when it was uncomfortable, and he refused to treat exhaustion as a conclusion. He refused to let the first thought of quitting become a decision.
I realized if I keep going back and going back and going back until just becomes, your mind will say, okay, we're gonna figure it out, because he is not going to stop.
That mindset carried him into some of the most demanding military training environments in the world, including Navy SEALs training, where physical limits are tested and mental limits are exposed even faster.
I had to go do it. And I started callousing my mind at this point in my life. And I lost the weight. And I went back to recruiter. I got into that class, and I went through 3 Navy SEAL Hell Weeks in 1 year. Only guy to ever be in 3 Hell Weeks in 1 year, to my knowledge. The first one I didn't make it through. The next two I did, and that I just didn't. I didn't stop anymore from there.
Under pressure, the mind does something predictable. It tries to protect you. It turns discomfort into meaning. Pain becomes stop. Fatigue becomes limit. Doubt becomes truth. And once you believe those interpretations, your behavior follows instantly. Most people don't fail because they can't continue. They fail because they accept the first version of reality their mind creates under pressure. David Goggins trained himself to interpret that process, not by removing pain, but by refusing to let pain decide meaning. Pain is real. Fatigue is real. But quitting is still a choice. It's not a requirement. That distinction is where everything starts to
As
shift.
time went on, I kept on getting rolled back to day one. And every day got longer and longer. So what I had to do was I had to take this big chunk and make it small. So I became the master of the one day that I was living.
From there, he pushed himself into endurance events that strip away comfort completely. Long distances, long hours, no immediate reward, no validation in the moment, just the decision to keep moving forward under pressure. That reveals something most people never confront. The mind often gives up long before the body really has, not because it is weak, but because it's trying to create certainty in an uncertain situation. Certainty often comes in the form of stopping, but stopping is not always the right answer. Sometimes it's comfort disguised as logic. This is where David's story stops being about running, military training, or endurance events. It becomes about identity. Every time someone quits at the first sign of difficulty, they reinforce a version of themselves that avoids discomfort. Every time they keep going despite it, they weaken that version. And over time, one becomes dominant, not because of a single decision, but because of repeated actions that slowly reshape who they are. That leads you to the real question his story forces on you. It's not whether you're motivated, it's not whether you're capable, but what version of yourself you are reinforcing every time things get uncomfortable. Because the difference between the life you have and the life you want is rarely intelligence, it's rarely opportunity, and it's rarely timing. It's what you choose to do in the moments when stopping feels justified and continuing offers no immediate reward. That is the real separation, and that is where your life is often decided.